Hi, everybody. Welcome to first meeting of Audiophile Society. Super excited to have Stephen. We all know him by now. I am thrilled and excited about the next 12 weeks. Some of it will be late at night when I'm in South Africa. Next time you see me, I will hopefully be signing in from the pool. Um, so, a couple of things. We will post this on the website later. We will also post a page with links to the clips so that if you want to send it to someone else, you can share that. I think that is all. If anybody has any questions about the website, please contact me or Derek. And I am going to give it over to Stephen to explain how this is all going to work. Thank you, Stevie.
Thank you, Rochelle. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first edition of Audiophile Society. Can everybody hear me okay? So first of all, yeah, it's okay. Okay, great. I want to start by just talking about the series for a moment, just giving you a little overview. Today is, in fact, an overview of the whole series. We're just kind of going to dip our toes into various genres, types of music, and eras of recording. We're going to talk about the acoustic recordings and a little bit about how that was technically achieved. Most of you probably know about that, maybe some don't. We're going to hear electrical recordings from a whole variety of eras, some comparisons of electronic recordings versus acoustic recordings. Um, I should say electrical recordings versus acoustic recordings. That's the term of choice. And today should just, as I said, be an overview. Starting next week, we have kind of specialized different programs. Next week, for instance, will be called Bel Canto in its Birthplace, Italian repertoire from the Baroque through Verdi. That is kind of self-explanatory. And on December 27th, just a couple days after Christmas, we'll have Let the Florid Music Praise, which will be a festival of coloratura, ornamentation, fioritura, all things frilly um, and flighty. And then on January 3rd, to bring in the new year, we'll have Bel Canto auf Deutsch, Wagner and Strauss. That's just a little preview of the upcoming few weeks. In some subsequent weeks, I'll have some partners in crime here. I'll have guests, special guests, who will come and present some of their favorite recordings as well. So that's just a little overview of how we're going to work. We're going to jump right in. I'm going to share my first video here. Give me just a second to get this. This is a little bit of a thing in progress here. We're going to start with 4 recordings of the prologue to Pagliacci. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's quite long, as you know, but I'm going to start with a modern recording, a modern live recording of Dmitry Vostovsky singing the prologue in 2003. And let's just jump in and hear a bit of this. I'll start it at the beginning of the clip, and then I'll proceed to skip to a later point in the clip, as I will with all 4 of the examples. Here's Vorstovsky. Okay. This is the hard part. Share screen.
Si può, si può, signore, signori, scusatemi se da solo li presento, io sono il prologo. Poiché il scenatore non dica maschere, mentre l'autore in parte vuol riprendere la vecchia usanza e a voi di nuovo per dirvi come pria le lagrime e voi piuttosto che le nostre nave gabbare di strioni le nostre anime così il concetto vi dissi. Ora ascoltate come vi ascolta. Andiam in camicia.
Sorry.
Può
Okay. I forgot to add before. Please, while you're watching these, if you'd like to comment in the comment room, I see everybody's kind of gotten that. Please feel free to do that. I will look at the comments as we're playing the. I can't pretty very well do it while I'm talking, but I can do it while we're listening to the clips together. So I will, if there are questions, comments, I will be happy to address those. And I do want to have a lot of feedback. This is a listening society among friends, so I'm leading it, but please don't feel that you can't join in. You can raise a hand or unmute yourself, not during the music, but you can unmute yourself and comment if you want, anytime. Anytime that I'm talking. Talk over me, not the music. It's much better that way. Our second baritone, moving backwards in time, that was a modern digital live recording. It sounds pretty typical of what we would hear in any live recording now, in terms of quality, in terms of how we hear the voice and the qualities that the microphone captures. This is going back to the 1950s. And here we have what was called at the time high fidelity. We don't think of it as really high fidelity now. You can definitely hear a difference in the quality. It sounds slightly old-fashioned, and yet in its own way, it's quite a clear recording. This is going to be Leonard Warren, and it's a sound film that I want you that you'll be able to watch him as well as hear. Three of these are sound films. Only the oldest is an audio only recording. Here is Leonard Warren, and I will just again have to share this.
Parte vuol riprendere le vecchie usanze che a voi Vamo per dirvi come pria le lacrime che ne versiam son false degli spasimi e dei nostri martir non allarmatevi No, l'autore ha cercato invece fingermi. E voi, piuttosto che le nostre povere gabbane istrioni, le nostre anime considerate, voi che sia uomini di carne ed ossa, e che di questo amato mondo ai padri si il concetto vi dissi, ora ascoltate con me l'esolto. Andiamo,
And he comforts poor Canio backstage. Yeah, I don't know. That was not from a complete Pagliacci. I don't know exactly what that was from. I think it was from one of those 1950s television programs like World Stages or Your Firestone Favorites. They had there was so much culture on TV in the 1950s as opposed to what we get now. People like Leonard Warren were eh, pretty well known by the general public. We're going to go back and hear an even better known in his time, a big star, not only on the Metropolitan Opera stage, but he made many Hollywood movies as well. And this is Lawrence Tibbett, who was the reigning Verdi baritone of the late 20s, all through the 30s, and well, really not very far into the 40s because he lost his voice fairly early. Um, but Tibbett is an interesting character. I think you'll notice that when I play this, that the sound of his voice actually seems, although it's a bit leaner than Warren's, it seems to be a little centered a tiny bit lower and almost sounds more like a bass baritone from the timbre. Um, See if you agree with that. That's the way I hear it. I'm going to share now. No, I don't have what I want there. Sorry. History. I have to keep going back to history. Those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it.
si può, signore, signori, scusatemi, se da sol mi presento, io sono il prologo. Poiché nicht ancor le antiche masse metti d'autore, in parte vuol riprendere le vecchie usanze e a voi di nuovo inviami. Ma non per dirvi come brio, le lacrime che noi versiam son false, degli spasmi e di nostri martir, non allarmartevi. No, no, massima sol che l'artista è un uomo e che per gli uomini vivere ed al vero vedrete nell'odio i tristi frutti e nell'or gli spasimi urli di rabbia udrete e di
Sorry, I keep putting repeat on instead of stop. Yeah, I couldn't bear to to stop that one. It was just so good. Um, is there there was a question that I wanted to go back to that I think, let's see. Oh, this is so interesting. Everybody's chiming in. I'm having to go way back in the questions here.
For me, the interesting thing was where the voice goes into speech, which we read about historically a lot, and you hear it in these old recordings. This kind of in this speechy parts of some stuff. Like you hear it in Figaro recordings sometimes as well. And it's really interesting because it's a different way in which speech is used these days, right? These days, people get really upset and then they stop singing and then they kind of shout at the audience. And this is kind of a different thing. It goes from the singing just kind of in a little like theatrical speech, and then it enters the singing again. You don't get the feeling that it's because he can't sing it. It just kind of plays with that idea of sing speech, and it seems completely natural. That's the thing that was really interesting to me.
Because their speech in those days was also supported and well supported and done well technically, so that there wasn't this difference between when you speak you suddenly become gnarled and gruff and all this kind of stuff, and like we do nowadays.
Right. It's not that the opera is too much opera for him, which is what I sometimes feel, right? When you hear people kind of going into speech and shouting, you're like, oh my God, your voice cannot possibly do it singing wise. So now you're shouting at me. You never have that sensation when these guys do it.
I want to end with one other baritone. We're spending a lot of time on this, but I think it's worth it. This next is an acoustic recording. It was done before 1925, meaning there were no microphones involved. This was sung into a horn. The horn had concentrated the sound down to a little filament that vibrated, and that filament was attached to a stylus that grooved into a disc, or in some cases a cylinder, a wax cylinder, the sound vibrations. And the playback was the reverse of that process, also usually ending up being the speaker was a horn. So you've seen, probably most of you've seen pictures of this process of Caruso or someone like that standing in front of the horn, or listening to his own recordings in front of the horn of his Victrola. This is a contemporary of Caruso's, Tito Ruffo. Let me just get his dates here because it's interesting. Tito Ruffo was born in 1877, so his musical schooling was from before the turn of the century. Um, and yes, these I think acoustical recordings are more difficult to listen to because they don't have the full range of overtones. The overtones only go from about 100 hertz to about 2500 hertz. This is why basses and baritones and tenors to some extent were easier to record and have faithful sounding recordings of their voices than sopranos and mezzos. Certain instruments could be reproduced very well in acoustic recordings. The banjo was very popular on acoustic recordings for all of you banjo fans out there. The xylophone was quite. Trumpets were and trombones were good as well, but not instruments that had complex series of overtones like violins so much. Violins, like sopranos, sound a little flat, not so much in pitch, but just in lack of overtones and lack of richness in the sound. And it's something we'll get to in our next excerpt after the Pagliacci. But this is now Tito Ruffo.
ecco vi dissi, ora ascoltate come gli è svolto Andion incomico.
Some of you noticed that the pitch seemed a little off on that it sounded at a lower pitch level. It did sound like more closer to C major than to D flat. I don't think it was a case that Rufo used transposition. Believe me, Rufo never had any problems with his top. He had tops for days. It's probably one of those things where the record was probably made at a slightly different speed. The 78 standard was not that standardized in the early days of recordings, and you find a lot of records that play sharp or flat. This has really been the Crutchfield talks about this a lot, that for instance, most of De Lucia's records for a long time were played at 78, where they tended to play too fast and gave his vibrato a really unpleasant bleeding sound. Fernando de Lucia, the Italian tenor. And it wasn't until later that they discovered that the machines that De Lucia was recorded on recorded at a faster speed, meaning that when you play them back, it had to be at a slower speed, I guess I should say, yeah, that they would need to be played back at a slower speed as well. Any thoughts about our four baritones? Anybody want to chime in and make an observation? Be a good time. I love your chats, your comments in the chat room. But if anybody wants to say something, now would be a good time. If not, we're going to go on to Lily Lehman. Oh, Melanie.
Yeah, hi guys. The thing that I find so remarkable and refreshing is how little, and I wrote this in the chat earlier, how little of what we think of as that pronounced baritone hook there is. And when it's used, it's for effect. It isn't as a lifestyle. And I think some of our younger baritones, and even the ones of the last 20 years, could really listen to that for the beautiful onset that everybody's talked about, as opposed to that high that we sort of think about as that kind of typical Verdi baritone sound.
Yeah. So little of that. And did you notice there's one thing that I happen to think this is a rather good recording of Vorstovsky. It's one of my more favorite ones of his. But even here, he does that thing that baritones do of near ends of climactic notes, or even sometimes ending notes of phrases of intensifying the vibrato and kind of ending with a rough sound at the end of a note for emphasis. You don't hear any of that. Maybe actually, believe it or not, I hear it a tiny bit with Rufo. Sometimes the earliest of the baritones, I hear a little gruffness in the lower part of his sound, but with Warren and Tibbet, you don't hear it at all. It kind of seeing the fact that you do hear a bit of it in to the Rufo just shows that these things are always sort of in the air as temptations of a little bad technique coming in, a little drama getting the better part of your technique or whatever, and these things don't so much just appear out of thin air. They're tendencies that are always there, but we can choose to sing better or worse. End of sermon. Now I'm going to go on to a very important early singer who was caught a little late in her career, and that is Lily Lehman. Lily Lehman was born in 1848. She's one of the oldest singers we have on record. She sang at the opening of the Bayreuth Festival in 1876 at the inaugural season of the first complete Wagner Ring. She sang the roles of Voglinde, the first Rhine maiden, and Helmwege, the Valkyrie daughter that gets to sing the battle cry up with the top B in the third act of the Ride of the Valkyries. She had a long career at the Metropolitan Opera before the turn of the century and made several debuts after the turn of the century when her powers were perhaps a little bit in decline. This recording comes from 1907, and it's a recording of Ach ich liebte from Die Entführung aus dem Serail by Mozart. And it's very notable in that she sings all, and I do mean all, of the appoggiaturas in the proper place. And I have a little story to tell you about that after we listen to her. So, without further ado, I will share Miss Lily Lehman. Sorry, this takes me a moment, guys, but it is what it is. Machine's slow today for one thing. It just wants to be draggy. Okay. Yeah, that had a mixture of good and bad things, obviously, and it is frustrating that the technique of recording was so primitive in 1907 that there's a lot that we can't hear. We have to kind of, as Crutchfield says, fill in with our imaginations what we would hear in a real acoustic or in a recording that captured the upper partials of a real acoustic. Um, anyway, I think in fact she was 60. I had it that she was 60. Oh no, okay, okay. Oh, I had it wrong. She was no, I definitely had it wrong. I had it that she was 58.
It
Anyway,
says, yeah, it says on the recording that she's 58, but I think she was 60. I mean, I'm just getting, as Melanie says, give the girl a break. I mean, seriously, I don't know anybody at age 58 or 60 who can sing with that clarity of tone, with that stability and consistency of vibrato. I mean, I say let's bow to her. That's me. That's just me.
Lily Lehman. Well, I want to read a little something about those appoggiaturas. Um, she grew up singing these. Obviously, she was connected to the older Italian tradition, and in her book, which is called not How to Sing, which many of you may have looked at, with the chart with the notes coming out of the various parts of your head, but another book called My Path Through Life, Mein Lebensweg. She explained that the younger generation of conductors, particularly German conductors who were coming up, no longer understood the proper application of the appoggiatura. And she wrote, every singer trained in the classical school, and to that belongs the Italian art of singing, knows and must know that the accent falls on the penultimate syllable of a final word, and that this accent must be brought out, not only in the spoken word, but in the music. Two equal sounding notes on syllables that are spoken long and short would be both a neglect of the word accent and of the musical expression, and of that neither Mozart nor Beethoven would ever have been guilty. Up to my time, no artist would have been submitted to such a prohibition, the prohibition on singing the appoggiaturas by the conductors, and never was it suggested to me by any one of the newest conductors, because the authority of my knowledge was my protection. Try that one out for size. The authority of my knowledge was my protection. Does there exist, however, among the singers of today, one who possesses artistic influence and who will defend himself against caprice? I am, unfortunately, forced to doubt it, as their attainments are not of the kind that convinces. Ouch! Anyway, yeah. So she just said it all, and anytime someone tells you, oh, there's no portamento in Mozart, there's too many appoggiaturas in Mozart, point them to Lily Lehman. Well, point them to Mozart and what he did in his own. That's another subject. But point them to Lily Lehman's recording, and
I Stephen, I just want to interrupt and say it is the
please do.
funniest thing because I was planning to make a whole thing about Ach ich liebte because I'm so tired of hearing the wrong notes. But now I'm no longer going to do it because it's done. So you all just listen to this. You all can like put in your own appoggiaturas. I have been absolved from preaching on it. Lily and Stephen has done my job.
Good old Lily. She's quite the gal for the job. We're going to go here from here to two very important artists whose careers span the acoustical era of recording and the electronic era of recording. The soprano Rosa Poncel and her oftentimes partner, the tenor Giovanni Martinelli. And we're going to hear two recordings, excerpted because they're quite long, of the tomb scene from Aida. First one recorded in 1924. The second one just 2 years later in 1926, using the electrical process. And I want you to hear with the same voices and the same setup, taken even in the same studio in Camden, New Jersey, that RCA had, the difference in the qualities of these two recordings. I'll play a bit, first of all, of the 1924 recording, and I'll skip to the O Terra Dio at one point. Again, sorry to skip around. I'll have these posted on a list, and you can go back and listen to any of them in completeness if you want to. Share screen. Make sure I have the right one here. Yes, this is the 24. Okay, skipping ahead to the Hotel Radio. Please don't kill me, but in the interest of time, I want to go ahead to now the electrical recording. And this will sound like high fidelity to you after the previous one. You'll immediately notice that the opened up sound stage, the upper partials, a lot more air around the sound.
So is this re-recorded or is it remastered?
No. This was re-recorded. This was a second recording. They came back to the studio specifically to remake their famous duet recording in better sound.
So this is extremely instructive. We have some other instances of this as well, because it's by really listening to this difference that you learn how to fill in the blanks with the old recordings, right? If you now know with your modern ear, like listening through the electric recording equipment, what it sounds like, then you can kind of like start to figure out how people sounded whom we do not have more modern recordings of.
Right. Here we go. Electrical recording 2 years later. Sounds like a real orchestra suddenly.
La porta alla pietra sopra me si chiude. Ecco la tomba mia, del vino luce più non vedrò. Non rivedrò più a vita. Aida, dove sei tu? Passato almeno vivere felice, la mia sorte orrenda sempre ignorar. Qual gemito, una larva, una visione, no, formare questa, che Aida. Restavi il cuore della tua
I'm going to move it ahead just for in the interest of time. Again, you'll be able to go back and hear any of these you want to. 6:45. Okay. Side break. Okay, folks. Yeah, that's worthy of applause, I think. That's pretty great. Hard to know what to say about that after that. I would love to have you've all been commenting away in the chat, and I've loved your comments. Anybody like to say anything of a bit more of a bit longer in nature, or have anything to say? We've gone about an hour now. I have lots more stuff I could play because I overplanned madly for this session. I have probably 2 hours worth of material, but I don't want to bore anyone, and I don't want to go on too long. Um, Somebody unmute yourself and make a comment.
Stephen, could you quickly just, to make sure everyone's on the same page, give us like basically what are the actual differences? Why do we hear? Laura said she heard her voice at Poncella is richer and the tenor is more pointed. And obviously we know we're missing both overtones and some of the undertones as well. Like we struggle to hear lower frequencies as well. Could you give a little bit of an overview just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Well, yeah, you've basically said it right there. The upper partials, the high overtones are simply cut off. They're not there in the original recording. Low tones below 100 hertz are not 100 vibrations per minute are not heard on the recording, and any undertones that thereof. So you're missing a little bit of fundamental in the tone, and you're missing lots and lots of high overtones. This would account for why the richness is not there in her voice, in Lily Lehmann's voice, in Marcella Sembrich, and name your favorite pre-acoustic soprano, and this is also why there's the little bit of the very typical point in Martinelli. Anybody that's ever heard his most famous recordings are his later recordings of Otello from the late 30s. He made there's a broadcast from 1939 that is Elizabeth Rethberg, Martinelli, and Lawrence Tibbett together doing Otello. That is one of the greatest performances of anything ever. I'll try to play something from that sometime. Maybe the Vengeance duet with Tibbett and Martinelli. Really amazing.
Maybe Kimberly is saying that she needs to understand better these different recording types and periods, and I'm thinking that I continue to think about different things that we can do with the community that lines up. So Kimberly, it might be an interesting idea to take these two recordings that we just listened to and put sections of that in Voce Vista, because that would really show us what we, just from a visual perspective, what basically in exactly the same sound, maybe we can clip like certain little bits and say, okay, when it is recorded in the old, before the microphone, before the electronic age, this is what that looks like, and that is how it corresponds. And then this is how it fills out in the electronic age, and how, and that kind of helps us, because as I said earlier, right, that helps. Yeah, that's great for visual learners, and I think it would even be interesting for opera fans who don't, because we all need to learn how to listen to those old recordings. So if you see the same voice, the picture of it, pre-microphone and with microphone, then you kind of have this idea of like what it is you're missing. Because I think that the point here, right, Stephen, is that we are missing out on a huge part of the tradition of singing and what our art form is really built on, if our ears just don't want to accept that thin sound. We're like, I just can't listen to that. Then you miss out on all of it, everything that those people bring to the history of
yeah, the only answer for that, I'm going to be a little absolutist about this. The only answer for as in so many things in life, is to, as the saying likes to go these days, educate yourself. And sorry to be that blunt about it, but you really have to get over that initial, oh, it's a scratchy old recording. Yeah, it is. It is, and it will always be. There's no way to really take the scratches out of the recordings without taking some of the information. They've tried many times to develop noise reduction techniques that take the swishes of the 78s out. It always ends up making the voices sound flatter and just not right. So
I think, if I may, like another
Yeah.
interesting thing, I'm not sure if this is Voce Vista that you can do this on, but you can isolate and only listen to certain frequencies. That really shows you what is there, because the interesting thing is that a lot of, in the early recordings, there is no like lower pitches, and our ear fills them in, and we hear a lot of things that actually aren't there. And so if we're doing that with our ears, if we can train to listen to the voice in that way as well, and to hear voices where you're only listening cut off, to the fundamental, and what that would sound like just with the acoustic versus the electrical would be cool as well. So
Right.
in the future.
Yeah, I
Quite
think
quite often we're hearing the first overtone, the octave overtone of the lower pitch that's cut off.
I'm a fan of like saying, maybe we ask Kimberly and Dana and Dave, like the voice science people, to help us like make a little like presentation about like this is what it is we see. And I just want to echo what Dave says. We really want to be able to listen to the singers of that era and learn from the best singers, and not learn from the best post-production team, because now you have all of these overproduced sounds that everybody's like made to sound great. Even people who are making recordings for school, right, say for the students, on the like, oh well, I sound better with this microphone. Oh, what is the best microphone I can get? These people were shouting into a horn, right? I mean, shouting, they had to also, that's the other thing, right, they had to they had to sing kind of louder in order for everything to be picked up. So there are all kinds of things that we have to think about when we listen to it. But I think it's really important, because we are either wanting to be professional singers, are professional singers, or want to listen to professional singers and want to be professional connoisseurs, right? Want to be like real devotees of our art form. And that means that you really have to bow at the feet of the singers and not the recording team or who had the best microphone.
Yeah, well put. They were actually quite active during these processes of recording these acoustic recordings. They would have to be very close to the horn for piano moments, and still be singing at a slightly higher than normal volume. And they would at the same time have to sometimes back up when they sang their loud high notes, or they would overload the recording process and distortion would occur. So there was all sorts of ways to fuck it up, basically, and very few ways to get it right. They were always working within these parameters.
Stephen,
Yeah.
there's a movie called Two Sisters from Boston, and we see Melchior playing someone from, at the time, about 30 years earlier, and he actually has two guys on either side of him leaning him in and out, but it looks like modern mic technique, where where they pull the mic back for the high note, so they pull him back, and then the two violinists run up next to the horn for the interlude, and then
I remember that scene. That's
because of course you have to do all of that into the horn. You can't move the microphone or anything. It's a very interesting. I think somebody found that video back in the spring. I'll see if I can find it, because I think it's probably because there would have been tech people on the film who would have been around for that kind of recording, so it's probably reasonably accurate.
Yeah, reasonably so. Although, did you say they're doing this for a microphone?
No, they're doing it in front of a horn.
In the horn. Or I thought you said a microphone. That part would be inaccurate.
Yeah, he's singing the prize song from Meistersinger without the second verse. Yeah.
Oh, just the way I like it. Kidding. Anybody else with any brilliant thoughts? Might I just play one further thing just to kind of play us out for today? I'll give you a choice. Who votes for Layman and Melchior in the end of Act 1 of Valkyria? Or Georges Thiel singing Après un rêve forêt. Two very different things.
George Teal.
Georges Thiel, we're going to have Georges Thiel. Fantastic. Great French tenor, voice of incredible clarity. And you'll hear in this the there's no rubato in Fauré, wrong, and you'll hear there's no portamento in French music, wrong. Um, exactly, it's a different kind of portamento, and think about as you listen to his voice, he's a tenor, similar weight of voice to Martinelli's, both of them lyric dramatic tenors who sang both on the lyric and dramatic side. So listen to the difference in his portamento and what you heard Martinelli doing as Radames. I will just get the share going. This is from a rather scratchy 1930s recording, sorry. It is electrical, but it's just it's a bad pressing. So now you know what to say when someone says to you, "Oh, there's no portamento in French music." What do we do? Anyway.
People just make this stuff up. They just make this stuff up, right? They say it because somebody said it to them, and maybe somebody they respected said it to them. But literally, all you need to do is listen to 2 recordings. And then you're like, well, somebody must have made this up before this because nobody told Georges Steele.
Yeah.
And I mean, how did Georges Steele get it so wrong? How could he have been so terrible
He
at
didn't.
singing in French?
When Fauré said he didn't want tons of rubato in his music. He was talking about the kind of thing that happens on a lot of Elena Gerhardt's early Lieder recordings, where she and her pianist are singing An die Musik, and they slow the tempo down at one phrase to about half the speed that they've been going at. Fauré lived in an era of such extreme rubato that he was saying that he wanted something more subtle, more supple, more French, typically understated. And as you heard, that Thiel's portamenti were slightly more understated, if you want to put it that way, more subtle or more bound into the line than Martinelli's, which stick out a little bit more. You can say.
This is the same as the conversation we often have about when people say don't sing with vibrato, and it's like when we take it out of context, you don't get the whole information. So people just quote these verses like from a Bible without saying in what period it happened, right? So oh my God, my people, I am so thankful for this. What an amazing way to spend a Sunday afternoon. I'm all like verklempt. I'm sorry, but I'm verklempt. I'm like, what an amazing thing. When Steven still lived in New York, we used to have Sunday club, and we would go for margaritas and Mexican food every Sunday night. And I'm like, this is like a new Sunday club. I'm so thankful, Steven, for
Well, thank you, but where's my margarita is what I want.
At 5 o'clock. You all are coming back at 5 o'clock, right, for the Bel Canto Boot Camp holiday party.
This, Rochelle?
Yes.
Okay.
What? Say again?
It's this link, right?
No, it's a different link.
It's if you go to belcantobootcamp.com/party.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we are going to say goodbye to everybody. We hope to see you next week. But I want you to please bring a friend. Okay, bring a friend, because this is the part of our work that is really available for everybody. As Derek was saying to me privately in the chat, some of our conversation is geeky, but we're here to share that to other people, right? We have this moment to speak, people. So we are wanting to invite your friend who's an opera fan but doesn't really know kind of what's portamento. I want people then to say, what's this portamento thing? And then we can go back and listen and be like, it's when we talk about this thing, right? And that is our purpose here. So invite people to join us, because everybody who loves music and who loves listening to music can enjoy doing this with us, can enjoy learning with us and talking with us.
So there was, just to answer some questions. Yeah, we will come up with something and we'll send it. All of you should have gotten an email at some point in the week from us with some news and some links. So we'll put in that something that you can send on to people to tell them about this. And then, yes, we're going to upload the playlist on the website.
Yeah, so now, up till now, a lot of our stuff was on Facebook. So now you have to get used to log in to the website and see stuff there, because it's much easier for us to organize things there. We don't have really time, otherwise people are like, I can't find this thing, where is it? Now it's on the website. Get used to, it's like whatever it is you do, you brush your teeth and then you log on to Bel Canto Boot Camp and you check out what's been going on. Find your inspo for the day. Also, Derek, thank you very much for the fantastic Advent calendar. If you're not seeing the Advent calendar, follow it on Instagram. It's, again, share with your friends. Okay, I'm going to... What's again?
Especially the recording from today.
Today's recording is fantastic. Have you seen today yet? It's Happy Hanukkah Day, and it is one of our favorite rabbis singing. It is fantastic, fantastic recording. Okay.
I'm calling it Il Cantore di l'Amor, because there's
exactly.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I will see you hopefully at 5 o'clock to celebrate the year.
Or drop in whenever.
Or drop in whenever. We'll be there from 5 to 7. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye all.